Hello, I'm a student of Bhikkhu Candana. This is just a reminder that he is a homeless monk, depending entirely on donations to live and share the Dhamma. If you want to help support Bhante, our teacher, please consider donating to this cause. Thank you and enjoy.
There is the example of two frogs, the simile of two frogs. One frog lives on wide open spaces by the beach where a wide river flows into the ocean. So much food, so much expanse, so much territory that this frog lives basically in luxury, in frog terms, I guess. At nights, he has the vast open starry nights and the stars, countless stars overhead, the moon. In daytime, the sound of waves. Nearby there's a forest. So much food. So you have basically a very happy frog. One day that frog keeps hopping away, goes on an excursion, enjoys, the territory that he lives in. And slowly, he doesn't take note of the time as the day is advancing, and then it gets dark. So he's so far away from his home, and he gets worried, and he's like, I don't think I'm going to make it back before dark. So he says, let me see if I can just settle in somewhere. And suddenly he hears the sound of another frog somewhere, ribbit, ribbit, far away. But he's like, oh, what is that? I think one of my cousins might be, living here. So he hops and gets closer and closer to the source, and he says, oh yeah, there is a frog. But it's kind of, the sound is faint, and he calls out and he says, excuse me, is anyone here? I'm a stranger here in this foreign land. And from the other end, there's another frog's response. He says, yes, I am here. You can come and enjoy. You're free to stay here overnight, and come, cousin. So he goes and he jumps around and he gets to the source and he sees that it's a hole in the ground. He's kind of surprised, and he says, oh, then there's a smell coming out of it, not a pleasant one. And he looks down and he sees a frog there. He says, oh, come to my domain, my brother, my cousin. It's been such a long time since I had, one of my kin visiting me. And with much hesitation and trepidation, finally he agrees and he jumps in. And he looks around and the water is muggy, and it's apparently like a rusty remnants of an old barrel, a metal barrel that has nasty water in it and other stuff. And this other frog is lounging in it, proud of his domicile. And he says, you can pick any corner of this vast empire I have. And the frog, the visiting frog, gets confused and he says, what are you talking about? He says, oh, this is my home, he says. Enjoy it. You're free to do whatever. You eat whatever you like. It's my, basically, mikasa is sukasa. The frog is being hosted now, so he can't be rude, he can't demean it, albeit it would be truthful. He keeps quiet, and for a few hours, this other frog, the host now, keeps talking with such, flair and such admiration of his home. He says, look at me, look at the stars I see, it's so wide above, overhead at night. And he looks and he sees a faint star, like maybe 2, 3 of them. So after a few hours, he gets fed up and he says, "Excuse me, I don't want to come across as very rude and unappreciative. However, I come from a place where truly it's vast. There isn't these walls around surrounding us where I can barely breathe. What are you talking about, fresh air? What are you talking about, fresh water and endless, what is endless here?" He says. It smells bad, it's rusty, it's dirty, come, he says, come, let's go to my house. I'll show you what vastness is. I'm by the ocean, he says. Have you ever seen the ocean? He says, there is no such thing. What are you talking about? Have you ever seen the sky? You look everywhere. It's endless. Your head hurt, your neck hurts from looking around. You won't see its end. Come, let's go, he says. The water, the food, he says. Oh, I can't eat this food. Come, I'll show you what to eat over there. You can stay there with me forever. Eventually, this host frog gets upset. He gets offended and he says, you speak words that are not true. You lie to me. You're here as my guest and you're disrespecting me because you keep talking about untruth, things that cannot be real. This is real, he says. So now get out because you're an unappreciative, inconsiderate guest. And he says, okay. And the man and the frog leaves. So similarly, this metaphor or analogy has really stuck with me over the years when I look around the world. During the last 10 years or so, I've seen a lot change in the world. I'm not the only one, of course, who's noticed that. I'm glad to say hundreds of millions of people have noticed that and are noticing that, and it's growing. Hopefully billions of people are noticing this because things are not as we thought they were. I mean, every culture says that. That's the whole intention behind going to a university to study. That's the whole point in picking up a book to read. So what we have here is a situation where we're feeling like that second frog, the frog that's in the rusty, murky water barrel, dirty. And we're fooled. We feel fooled. Probably that second frog felt deceived. Not by the first, visiting frog, but the very fact that he had fooled himself into thinking that that was his vast expanse, etc., etc. He has so much freedom. No, you don't. We're realizing that as the noose is getting tighter, smaller. The passageways are getting smaller, fewer. They're shrinking. The liberties are being shrunk. And sooner or later, those of us who have been enjoying fun times, yes, the weekends, yes, spring break, yes, summertime or weekend, just weekend, to look forward for a weekend so that people would go and blow off some steam, as they say, or just have, break away from the mundane or the routine. That itself is being realized to be just not even a band-aid over a, gushing wound, bleeding wound. So people are feeling like, what was it all about? Was I deceived? There's so many questions that we are now asking, questions that we thought decades ago, for many of us, that we had received the answers for. Now you discover that no, that's not it. So the veils are coming off. Yesterday I was mentioning to a student how I've been mentioning in some of these responses to students, which in the form of recordings that I'm, having done, how I've mentioned in the past that nowhere in history, documented history, I've never come across it anyhow, even at the time of Lord Buddha, where you have so much inequity, so much evil running the world, so much deception on such a massive scale. I mean, you did have crooked rulers, you did have lying princes, and etc. You had deception because those three poisons that I keep mentioning, lobha, dosa, moha, the greed or lust, anger and hatred and delusion, those things have been with us, with beings forever. So long as you have beings, you have those. But this goes, whatever we're living through, goes beyond those on such a global level, global scale, and affecting such huge number of us, if not all of us, all of us. And so there is no protection from that. And at the same time, now we see how, yes, that is the case, based on my understanding of what's happening in the world. But the wonderful thing that also needs to be acknowledged is the fact that so many people now are, perhaps for the first time in human history, cognizant of what has been going on for such a long time. This is huge. This is you discovering that you have been living in that tiny little hole of a rusty barrel. That it wasn't heaven, and that it wasn't just this. There's more. And guess what? You don't know about it. You've been lied to. The history, the everything that's put out about medicine, the diseases we have, the cures that are available, that we're not given those, or made, have them be made available to us. The enormous greed that's running the show, while shutting people up, shutting people down. These are facts. Most of the sciences that we know today, it's actually pretty insignificant when it comes to what human beings have done up until even beginning parts of the 19th and even the 20th century. We're supposed to be much richer, more sophisticated in our use of our mind, our emotions, our bodies, and definitely technologies, where we do not become simply the consumers of them, where some small groups of us could know how to build certain tools like a computer or a laptop, a smartphone, so-called smartphone. Smartphone, yeah, but who's using it? A dumb human. That's what you have. It's a nasty dichotomy. It's an unnecessary dichotomy, I would say. Imagine if you had a tool that you could use it in so many different ways, far more than what it was intended for when it was made by its, whoever designed it. Look at the buildings that our ancestors have built. Within a few years, people discovered electromagnetic energy. They've discovered how to transfer a human voice across the world, how to send messages immediately, instantaneously. Simple things to us now, but try to go into the woods, lose your phone, and you're in desperate need of attention or something, medical attention, and you have none of these means left with you. What do? You panic because those skills aren't with you. How about if you don't know how to make fire? Something as basic as making fire. That's why I meant the other day how we are becoming dumber and dumber as a species. Dumb is some people say, oh, how could you say that, Bhante? You can't use the word dumb. Do you think it's appropriate? Of course it is appropriate. When it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, looks like a duck, lays eggs like a duck, and the egg comes out to be a tiny little duck chick, it's a duck. Lord Buddha called people stupid, foolish, idiots, dumb. They're in the suttas. Go look for them. But the point is, what do we do? People are okay with flying for hours to cross a few thousand miles, okay, in the air, and then land in this huge, gigantic piece of metal with a fuselage. That's a tube, basically, that carries fuel on its wings, okay, which is basically taking off because of the aerodynamics and the speed applied to it at a certain curvature to take off at a certain angle because of the air current and the speed. All these things working together in order for 250 people to to go floating up into the sky. Okay, that's wonderful. 150 years ago, why are we still using that? Why are there cars with 4 wheels with a combustion engine? Why? When I am using a cell phone and every few months there's a new, brand new, upgraded version of it. In the 90s, when as a layman, I got my first Apple Macintosh. It was one of those, it's like a tower. It's in a big, big TV monitor. Huge. It looks like a pizza oven. Now, you have something in your hands, probably even wearing a watch, which is probably thousands of times more powerful than those computers combined. Why are we not traveling by different means with less pain? Anybody who travels these days, and they're making it harder and harder for us to travel. Let's be honest about that as well. Creating more and more difficulties for any traveler. If you travel anywhere in the world with a plane, on a plane, you see how they have demeaned us. They take away all that could end up being an interestingly pleasurable or lovely experience, where you meet people on the way, where you're meeting people, they have you go through so many series of dehumanizing the way they speak to you. They yell, they frisk you, they do this, they look at you, they're so mean. You feel like you're a criminal. Plus, the hours and hours you have to waste, and then you go and wait, and they take away from you water, this, and of course they have all justification in their mind to do that to people. And then they torture you. And then they push you, squeeze you through tube-like things. It's like in the old days when I was forced to go to Las Vegas a few times because they would have shows of, business type of things, like as far as jewelry design, and I was involved with those, and they would have yearly shows, it's called, and you would have to stay in one of those hotels during the day or at night, where you have to go and retire. So I would have such a hard time to get into the area where I need to take the elevator to go up to my room, and especially to get out of the hotel/casino, because they want to make sure that you spend extra time, you get lost and you're attracted. So it's a major assault on your senses. Basically, you are like those rats or guinea pigs that a lab rat that is being squeezed through tiny little maze or passageways like a labyrinth in order for you to go get the cheese, while these other people, technicians, are looking at you, taking stuff from you, and they are taking a lot from us. We are now basically discovering that we are no more than just lab rats, consumers. Because as you're going through the airport, they're trying to squeeze out of you any dime, any currency, any money that they could get. Because there's no indication of how do you get out. Because suddenly there's a mall inside after all that dehumanizing experiences where you feel like you sigh. You're just like, oh, I'm so happy that I'm over those inspections and this and that. And no one gets, gives you an easier time as we all have to go, so we all comply, of course. But then you realize that you're nothing but a consumer, because now they're trying to sell you Gucci, this, that, chocolate, especially alcohol. Tons and tons of alcohol. During the lockdowns, guess what was one of the first places that they kept open? Liquor stores. There were no limitations. Go drink, go drink, go drink. What is that? Well, that's what you do when you want to slaughter an animal, in abattoir. That's what they do. They give all kinds of nasty things, hormones, to these animals so that they can be more plump and more, profitable for them. And then you get on this antiquated piece of machinery, although it's a brand new Boeing or Airbus or something. How does that equate with when you look at it as a scientist, when you look at it through patterns of, let's call it pattern of evolution, progression. When you look at the combustion engine, and then you look at, we didn't have phones. We didn't have phones. And then, because I remember it happened in my lifetime. In the 80s, when they said we're going to have a wireless phone, everybody started laughing at how preposterous this was. Especially one time I was watching TV, I was like 11 or 10 or 13, and there was in the news, there was this in Europe somewhere or in America, somebody had talked about, oh, we're going to have phones in our hands, plus we're going to watch TV on the phone. And they had something that was not even real, but they were acting like it was the real thing. I said, no, that's not, come on. Color TV, okay, I accept, because why? It happened in my lifetime. We didn't even have a TV when I was born. Then we had a black and white TV. We only got used ones that will always break down. And then finally in the 80s, 80 or 82, my dad got us a color TV for the first time. And that was like, wow, heaven. It was unbelievable. You're seeing colored images of people on the screen. This huge television. And then, but a cell phone? No way. They didn't even call it cell phone. Because it wasn't even, for us, it was, look at us. Every year there's like a new upgrade, a new phone, the new iPhone. And each one is more complex. Your computer screen, if you have a laptop, it's so thin. How can I compare that to the computer I had in the 90s that felt like a crane has to bring it, And now you can carry this to the coffee shop, you walk around with it, you don't even have to have a laptop. Oh, you have an iPad, oh, you're set. You can do all of it basically on an iPad. So, how is it logical? How is it conceivable that we can make such advancements in this area, but somehow, magically, still have to drive with 4 wheels or any wheels, with an engine, with a car that has zillions of pieces, which takes zillions of people to maintain. Aha! The tires have to be maintained, which means the roads have to be maintained, which means all these people who, and the petrol and the gas that goes in. So you see, slowly, if you're using your critical thinking well enough, you start seeing that there is not that much of a difference between us using these things, even if you're spending $100,000 on a car, even if it's so-called an electric car, which is a joke, because there's so many batteries, so heavy. No difference between us using these things and that frog caught in the hole, in the murky water, thinking that they are so advanced, so smart, so free, so free. They could do whatever they want. They can go everywhere they want. Where? In that small area of murky water covered, slime covered, rusty walls, holes in it, smelly barrel of it. So it's shocking for most people. What do? Just like that frog did. Kicks out anyone who says. You discredit, at least for yourself, the possibility. So you make it so outrageous. You turn that as a totally outrageous thought. That there could be a vast open space where you can see endless stars in the sky. Countless. No, that's not possible, you say. And then you go back into that hole. And that's what many people have been doing, but now people are waking up. Now people are saying, oh, wait a minute, let's peek out of that barrel and look. Let me see how far this other frog is going. Let me follow him to see if it is true. And many people are realizing. So it creates disillusionment. But instead of feeling some negative feelings about this, emotions about this, painful, we can look at the opportunities that this presents, because you're coming out of prison. The realization that you are in prison finally is huge. Because for the first time, you're seeing things as they are. Of course, there's the panic and the shock and feeling of desperation, but not to act on that and just seeing it for what it is. That's huge. That's a big, giant step in the right direction. Because that means you're coming out of that, because the mouse does not know that it is inside these labyrinths, that there are beings watching it. It just goes instinctually, and that's what they want to keep us at, that level. That's why they want to keep us on the level of greed, sexuality, hypersexuality, in fact, feeding your senses. Probably this is the most hypersexualized generation of humans I've ever noticed. I was in Thailand, I was disgusted by what I saw. I was in Asia, in different countries. I was surprised, I was shocked. I was in India, I was shocked. Of course, I'm not, the US, forget about it, it's everywhere. Europe, you go to Italy, you go here, there, you see it everywhere. What is happening? Why are people so into that? Okay, enough. Come back down to earth. But that's how they keep you on the instinctual level, where you don't see these patterns. When you're constantly thinking about the new iPhone coming out, when you're constantly thinking about these new video games, and this other thing with video games fascination, it's really sad, because people are sitting at home and they are becoming victims of these tantalizing lights and colors and the dopamine kick that they're getting from playing these video games, and they're becoming aggressive. As a therapist, I used to work with students and patients who were very much aggressive. And when you narrow it down, you saw that the video games and the parents allowing the child to have the video games in the first place, most of which are violent, and it's pointless to talk about rated M for mature audiences or things like that. That's a joke, because they still are going to play that game. Everyone knows that. It's just to protect the manufacturer legally. But these children would get up, actually, when you're losing a game, they would throw their phones at the wall. So the parents had bought them several phones in the process of months. And they would say, "Oh, what can I do? He just gets angry, he just slams it, and I have to buy him another one." Hello, there's your problem. While he's playing a video game. Oh, he's also very violent, or she's also very violent. There's that thing which is quite surprising, where girls and women are now into playing video games, and that they normalized it. So you do these things, you will stay in the labyrinth, because you're very much amazed and enjoying the bells and whistles. So in the old days, they used to go to sages, those who would know about that there's a vast open space, there's true freedom. That's why they would go to individuals like Lord Buddha, the kings, the philosophers, all kinds of people, including courtesans, serial killers, regular folk, farmers, beggars, rich people, merchants. They would all go because they wanted to know if this is the whole thing. Is there something else that I'm missing? And there would be some trust. Now, even those characters that are in the spotlight, and by the way, whoever is in almost like a celebrity, it has a celebrity status, but talks about spiritual, quote-unquote, matters, about the beyond or mindfulness or things like that, watch out, please. Anybody who becomes famous overnight, that's a red flag for you. Who's going on panels, who has millions and millions of followers and things, please do your due diligence. Don't fall. Do some work. Do some reading. Ask questions, healthy questions, with the desire to know, to learn. Otherwise, they will trap you in that end as well, because that's what we have. We have Satguru type people. We have Eckhart Tolle. We have other people. We had Sai Babas in the past, and now there's the other ones. You have in the West. You have in the East. You have globally now. So you run from the rain only to get caught up in the hailstorm, my mom used to say. Now you're a consumer of other so-called spiritual values, which doesn't change anything, because now you're, instead of gulping the new cell phone or the new movies or the video games, you're now gulping other stuff without digesting anything, because they come from questionable sources. So what's one thing that you need to look at? Who you're associating with. That's number one. Associating with good people or bad people, evil people. This is number one. This is not coming from me, by the way. This is coming from Lord Buddha himself. He would be asked again and again. He says, the companion you keep, is he or she foolish? Is he a fool? Is he somebody without a virtuous backbone, immoral, will they sell you out? Will they steal from you? Will they lie to you? Or would they not, under pressure? Will they cheat on you, let's say? Do they want something from you? So the first thing is who you associate with. Second is an extension of the first, which is living with virtue, morality. Today's world is in this mess because we do not practice morality, period. Ethical standards do not exist. And there's a saying, the dead fish starts smelling, the stench of it starts from its head. And that means, and it's a reference to the leaders. It could be a religious leader, or it could be a political leader, social leader, somehow, a leader of a company. If there are no standards being upheld diligently, heedfully, at that level, that's why most politicians, most presidents and prime ministers are all corrupt. Most CEOs are. Most. Why? Because the system that's running the whole show is all about greed, hatred, and delusion. That's why you're seeing all this mess in the world. And the way to harmonize it or create some type of a homeostasis, guess what is happening? They're trying to affect the whole population of the planet to be of that level. This is the same thing with the No Child Left Behind policies that they started in the 2000s, so that any lower or mediocre level of learning that a student had, everybody had to comply to that. So the teacher had to now dumb down the education. So even if you had very bright-minded students, potential geniuses in your classroom, now they're going to be sacrificed in becoming that. Why? Because, well, we don't want to leave Johnny over there. That is one of the sneakiest ways to dumb down society. So, who you associate with and ethical, moral, virtuous standards. You do these things, already you're going to see a huge shift, and you're going to see more and more things that were so blatantly around you, in your face type of a situation, where you no longer stand for them. And naturally, you will start taking care of your health, your mental health especially, aside from your physical health. And then wisdom will flow out of these, and you're going to heal society.